The letter trembled in my hands as I read the familiar handwriting, the same precise cursive that had once marked up my report cards with criticisms, the same hand that had written countless notes reminding me to be more ladylike, more proper, more like the daughter she wanted. My name is Stephanie, and after 5 years of silence, my mother was asking for help. Everything okay? Taya poked her head into my office, her expression shifting from cheerful to concerned when she saw my face. You look like you've seen a ghost. Worse, it's from my mother. I held up the envelope, still pristine white despite traveling across the city. Clara Horton never did anything messily, not even desperate pleas for assistance. The same mother who told you you'd end up homeless when you left Francisco? Taya stepped fully into the office, closing the door behind her. The sounds of our busy fashion house became muffled. Designers chattering about the upcoming collection, the rhythmic hum of sewing machines, phones ringing with potential buyers. The very same. I stood up, needing to move. The wall-to-wall windows of my office showcased the city I'd made my own, far from the suffocating suburban existence my mother had planned for me. She's lost everything, Taya. The investment Ronald convinced her to make, it went bad, really bad. Your golden boy brother screwed up. Shock horror. Taya perched on my desk, her bright yellow dress a stark contrast to my minimalist office decor. What exactly does she want? A job. I laughed, but it came out hollow. Can you believe it? The woman who told me fashion was a hobby for silly girls now wants to work in my little shop. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Brooks, Corbin needs your approval on the sustainable fabric samples for next season. Tell him I'll be there in 5, Julie. I pressed the button, then turned back to Taya. Remember that dinner? The last one before I left Francisco? How could I forget? You showed up at my apartment at midnight with mascara all over your face. The memory hit hard, my mother's voice cutting across the dining room table. A wife's place is supporting her husband, Stephanie. This business nonsense is just your way of avoiding responsibility. Francisco had sat there, silent as always, torn between supporting my dreams and agreeing with my mother. His silence had said everything. She's desperate now, I said, smoothing the letter on my desk. Ronald's investment scheme took everything, her savings, the house equity, even Dad's life insurance money. And now she needs her silly, irresponsible daughter to save her. Taya's voice dripped with sarcasm. The same daughter who built a 7-figure company from scratch while maintaining ethical production standards. The intercom buzzed again. Sorry to interrupt, but Corbin is getting anxious about those samples. Duty calls. I straightened my jacket, vintage Chanel, bought with my first real profit, and headed for the door. What would you do, Taya? Me? She hopped off the desk, following me out. I'd make her grovel, but then again, I'm petty like that. We walked through the main workspace, past rows of designers sketching, seamstresses working on prototypes, and marketing team members huddled around computer screens. My little shop employed over 50 people now, all earning living wages with full benefits. Morning, Stephanie. Corbin waved from his station, surrounded by fabric swatches. These just came in from the organic cotton supplier in India. The quality is amazing, but the price point? Hold that thought, I said, spotting a familiar figure through the glass entrance doors. My heart stopped. There stood Clara Horton, my mother, looking smaller than I remembered in her outdated suit, clutching her prized Hermes handbag, probably the last valuable thing she owned. Our eyes met through the glass, and for a moment I was 16 again, desperate for her approval. Is that? Taya whispered. She didn't wait for me to respond to the letter. I straightened my spine, feeling the weight of every eye in the office on me. Typical. Want me to tell security to escort her out? I watched my mother shift uncomfortably in the reception area, her perfect posture finally showing cracks. The woman who had controlled every aspect of my life until I broke free now stood in my domain, powerless. No, I said, a plan forming in my mind. Have Julie show her to the small conference room. Tell her I'll be there in an hour. An hour? That's a bit cruel, isn't it? Taya's smile suggested she approved nonetheless. Consider it her first lesson in working for someone else. I turned toward Corbin and his fabric samples, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Sometimes karma takes its time, but it always arrives eventually. The click of my heels against the polished concrete floor echoed with purpose. Let her wait. Let her feel what it was like to be at someone else's mercy for once. After all, she had taught me everything I knew about power, even if she never meant for me to use those lessons this way. The fabric swatches blurred before my eyes as memories of that night 5 years ago flooded back. I'd rehearsed the conversation with Francisco 100 times, but nothing could have prepared me for how it actually went down. I can't do this anymore, I told him, standing in our perfectly decorated living room that felt more like a museum than a home. I'm suffocating here. Francisco looked up from his laptop, his expression caught between confusion and concern. What are you talking about, mi amor? Everything is perfect. Your mother just told me about this amazing country club membership she's arranged for us. Perfect? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make him flinch. I'm running a growing business from our guest room because you won't let me lease an office space. Mom's planning our social calendar like I'm still 16. When was the last time anyone asked what I wanted? The business. He sighed, closing his laptop. Stephanie, it's a hobby. A nice one, sure, but you don't need to work. I make more than enough. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. My hobby made $30,000 last month. Did you know that? No, because you never asked. Neither did Mom when she scheduled those tennis lessons during my supplier meetings. The memory shifted to later that same night, at my parents' house. Mom had insisted on an emergency family dinner when Francisco called her about our fight. Ronald was there too, already successful in his investment firm, Mom's pride and joy. You're being ridiculous, Mom had said, cutting her chicken into precise pieces. Francisco is a wonderful husband. He supports your little projects. Projects? I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I have contracts with 3 major retailers. I'm employing 12 people. How is that a project? Sit down, Ronald had snapped. You're embarrassing yourself. No, I'm done being the family embarrassment. I grabbed my purse. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm done with all of it. If you walk out that door, Mom's voice could have frozen hell itself. Don't expect any support when this falls apart. A knock on my office door yanked me back to the present. Ellis, my financial advisor, stood there with a concerned look. Stephanie, the quarterly reports just came in. You might want to see this. I blinked, forcing myself back to the present. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He grinned, laying a folder on my desk. We're up 40% from last quarter. The eco-friendly line is exploding, and that expose you did on fast fashion sweatshops? It's driving customers to us in droves. I flipped through the numbers, a smile spreading across my face. Have you seen the Community Impact Report? That's the best part. Ellis pulled out another document. Your initiative to hire local seamstresses and provide training? It's transformed the neighborhood. But his expression darkened. There's something else you should know. What? Remember that abandoned factory complex we were looking at for expansion? Turns out Ronald's firm bought it last week. They're planning to flip it into luxury condos. My stomach dropped. The complex had been perfect for our needs. Central location, plenty of space for production and training facilities. More importantly, It would have provided jobs in an area that desperately needed them. Of course he did. I stood up, pacing. He probably knew we were interested. This has his pettiness written all over it. There's more. Ellis shifted uncomfortably. The local news is running a story tonight about displacement in the neighborhood. They're interviewing families being priced out by development projects exactly like this one. The intercom buzzed. Stephanie, your mother's asking if you'll be much longer. She's been waiting for almost 2 hours now. I pressed the button. Tell her I'll be right there. Looking at Ellis, I added, send me everything you have on that factory deal, every detail. Walking toward the conference room, I caught my reflection in the glass walls. Gone was the uncertain woman who'd fled her family 5 years ago. In her place stood someone who'd built something real, something that mattered. I pushed open the conference room door. Mom sat there, back straight as ever, but her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. Sorry to keep you waiting, I said, not sorry at all. I was just reviewing our quarterly reports. We're up 40%. She flinched slightly at the deliberate emphasis on our success. Stephanie, before you say anything else, I cut her off, I should mention we're planning a major expansion. The community needs it. Funny thing though, Ronald just bought the building we wanted. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Mom's face paled. In that moment, I knew. She'd known about Ronald's plan all along. Some things never changed, but I had changed. And this time, I was playing by my own rules. I had no idea about Ronald's plans, Mom said, but the slight tremor in her voice betrayed her. After years of listening to her perfectly crafted lies, I'd become fluent in her tells. Really? Just like you had no idea about the investment scheme that cost you everything? I settled into the chair across from her, noting how her designer outfit, once pristine, now showed subtle signs of wear. Before she could respond, Taya burst into the conference room. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. The local news crew is downstairs. They're doing that story about the factory complex, and they're asking for comments. Mom's head snapped up. What factory complex? The one Ronald just bought, I said, standing. The one that's going to displace 30 families when he turns it into luxury condos. Excuse me, Mom. Duty calls. Wait. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Let me help. I know how Ronald thinks, how he operates. I can... Like you helped before? I pulled away. By telling me I was throwing my life away? That I'd never amount to anything without a husband? Taya cleared her throat. The reporters aren't going away, Steph. Fine. I straightened my jacket. Mom, stay here. Taya, get Corbin to pull the community impact reports. And someone find Ellis. I need those property documents. The lobby was chaos. 3 news cameras pointed at our glass entrance, reporters clutching microphones like weapons. Through the doors, I could see signs being held up by local residents. Stop the displacement and people over profit. Ms. Brooks, a reporter shoved a microphone toward me as I stepped outside. What's your response to Ronald Horton's development plans? My response? I looked directly into the nearest camera. Horton investment firms' plan to convert the Marshall Street factory into luxury condos is exactly the kind of short-sighted development that's destroying our community. That's why my company is offering an alternative. The crowd quieted. Even the protesters lowered their signs. We're prepared to make a counteroffer, I continued, my heart pounding but my voice steady. One that will keep jobs in the neighborhood and families in their homes. Our plan includes a state-of-the-art production facility and training center, providing employment opportunities for local residents. But the property's already been sold, another reporter called out. The sale isn't final. Ellis appeared at my side, holding up a folder. We've uncovered some interesting details about the purchase agreement, details that might interest the city zoning board. Back inside, Corbin was waiting with a tablet. The community impact numbers are ready, and you might want to see this. Social media's blowing up. Save Marshall Street is trending locally. Perfect. I turned to head back to my office but stopped short. Mom stood in the hallway, watching everything unfold with wide eyes. This is what you built? Her voice was barely above a whisper. All of this? No, Mother. I built more than this. I built something that matters. I gestured to the crowd outside. Those people out there, they matter. Their lives matter. Unlike Ronald, I'm not in this just to make money. Ronald, she shook her head. He said the investment was guaranteed, that we couldn't lose. And you believed him because he's your perfect son. The words came out sharper than I intended. Just like you believed I was ruining my life by choosing this over being Francisco's trophy wife. Ms. Brooks? Julie appeared, tablet in hand. Ronald Horton is on line 1. He sounds angry. Put him through to my office. I turned to Mom. You wanted to help? Here's your chance. Show me you mean it. In my office, I put the call on speaker. Ronald's voice filled the room tight with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing, Stephanie? Hello to you too, brother dear. Saw the news yet? This is business. You can't just... Can't what? I interrupted. Can't stop you from destroying people's lives? Can't protect my community? Or can't beat you at your own game? Ronald, Mom's voice cut through the tension. What did you do with my money? Silence crackled over the speaker. Mom? Ronald's voice lost its edge. What are you doing there? Answer the question. Her tone was one I'd heard countless times growing up, the one that demanded absolute truth. What happened to my investment? As Ronald stammered through excuses, I watched my mother's face change. For the first time in my life, I saw her really seeing Ronald for who he was, seeing me for who I'd become, and maybe, just maybe, seeing herself for who she needed to be. The game wasn't over, but the rules had definitely changed. Your first day starts now, I told Mom the next morning, handing her an employee badge. Corbin will show you the ropes in the production department. She stared at the badge like it might bite her. Production? But I thought, perhaps something in management? You need to learn the business from the ground up. I gestured to Corbin, who approached with his characteristic enthusiasm. Everyone here starts at the beginning. Even Stephanie did, Corbin added cheerfully. Come on, I'll show you how to log quality control data for our incoming materials. As they walked away, I heard Mom's stilted voice. I've never actually used a computer for work. You're enjoying this way too much, Taya said, appearing at my elbow with coffee. Though I have to admit, watching Clara Horton learn to use a spreadsheet might be worth the price of admission. Speaking of prices, Ellis rushed over, waving a document. Ronald's firm just lowered their asking price for the factory. They're getting nervous about the media coverage. Good. I took a sip of coffee. Keep pushing. I want... A crash from the production floor interrupted me. Mom stood frozen beside an overturned box of fabric samples, her face flushed with embarrassment as younger employees rushed to help. I'm so sorry, she stammered. I didn't realize... It happens, Corbin assured her, already organizing the cleanup. You should have seen Juliet's first day. She managed to jam the industrial printer so badly we had to call in specialists. Really? Mom looked at Juliet, who nodded with a sympathetic smile. Took me 3 weeks to live that down, Juliet laughed. But now I run the printer training sessions. I watched the interaction with mixed emotions. Part of me wanted Mom to struggle, to feel the uncertainty I'd felt when I started. But seeing her accept help from people she would have previously looked down on, it was something. Stephanie? Julie's voice crackled over the intercom. Francisco's here to see you. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. What? Your ex-husband's in reception. He says it's about Ronald. Of course it was. Francisco had always been Ronald's favorite golf buddy, even after our divorce. I squared my shoulders and headed for reception. He stood there in his perfect suit, looking exactly as I remembered. Stephanie, you look successful. What do you want, Francisco? Ronald sent me to negotiate. He glanced around the office. Privately? Anything you have to say, you can say here. I crossed my arms. My team should hear this. Fine. He straightened his tie. Ronald's willing to sell you the factory at cost. No markup. He just wants you to stop the media campaign. At cost? I laughed. After what he did to Mom's savings? No. He'll sell at a loss, and he'll publicly apologize to the families he tried to displace. That's not reasonable. Neither was stealing my mother's retirement fund. Mom's voice cut in. She stood behind me, still clutching a handful of fabric swatches. Tell my son I want the truth, Francisco. All of it. Or the next news story won't be about the factory. It'll be about investment fraud. Francisco's face paled. Clara, you don't understand. I understand perfectly now. Mom stepped forward, her voice gaining strength. I understand that I backed the wrong child. I understand that while Ronald was playing with people's lives, Stephanie was building something real. She turned to me. The organic cotton supplier called. They're offering a 10% discount if we increase our order. I couldn't help smiling. Did you log it in the system? Corbin showed me how. She looked back at Francisco. Tell Ronald he has until tomorrow to make a real offer. After that, we go public with everything. Francisco looked between us, clearly thrown by this united front. I'll relay the message. After he left, Mom sagged slightly. Did I do that right? The supplier call really did come in, and I thought, you did great. I touched her arm briefly. Come on, I'll show you how to document supplier negotiations properly. Stephanie? Her voice was quiet. I know it doesn't make up for everything, but I'm starting to understand why you chose this life. It matters. It does. I led her back to the production floor. And speaking of things that matter, those samples aren't going to sort themselves. She actually laughed. A real laugh, not her usual polite society chuckle. My daughter, the taskmaster. Who would have thought? Life's full of surprises, I said, watching her return to work with new determination. Some of them actually turn out okay. The day continued, filled with small victories and minor disasters, but something had shifted. Mom was trying, really trying, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes of our old relationship. But first, we had a brother to deal with. I was reviewing design sketches with Corbin when I heard the shouting from the break room. Mom's voice, then Ronald's, both sharp with anger. You promised me. Mom's words carried clearly. You said it was guaranteed. Nothing in investment is guaranteed, Ronald shot back. You knew the risks. I knew nothing. Something crashed, probably Mom's coffee mug. You told me to sign papers I didn't understand. You said to trust you. I reached the break room door just as Taya and several other employees gathered, drawn by the commotion. Through the glass, I could see Mom standing over Ronald, her finger jabbing at his chest. Mom, I called out, pushing the door open. Everything okay in here? No, she snapped, not taking her eyes off Ronald. Your brother was just explaining how he lost every penny I had. Weren't you, dear? Ronald straightened his tie, trying to regain composure. The market is complicated. Show her, I interrupted. Show her the actual paperwork, Ronald. Show her where her money really went. His face reddened. That's confidential. It's my money. Mom's voice cracked. My life savings, your father's insurance money, everything we had. And now you're working as a glorified seamstress. Ronald sneered. How the mighty have fallen. Better a seamstress with dignity than a thief in a suit, Mom shot back. The break room went silent. Even Ronald looked shocked at her words. You don't mean that, he said quietly. I'm your son. And I'm your sister, I added, stepping closer. Didn't stop you from trying to sabotage my business with that factory deal. That was just business. No, Mom cut in. Business is what Stephanie does. She creates jobs, helps people, builds something real. You just move money around and call it success. While stealing from your own mother, Taya added from the doorway. Ronald's face twisted. You've turned her against me. You did that yourself, I said. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to sell us the factory at a 30% loss, and you're going to return Mom's investment. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. Or what? Or I go to the press with proof that you deliberately misled investors, Mom said, pulling a USB drive from her pocket. I may be new to computers, but Juliet is a very good teacher. We found your emails, Ronald. I couldn't hide my surprise. Mom had been busy. You're bluffing, Ronald said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Try me. Mom's voice was steel. I've lost everything except my daughter and this job. What else do I have to lose? Ellis has the paperwork ready, I added. Sign today, and this stays private. Refuse, and tomorrow's headline won't be about luxury condos. Ronald looked between us, his confident facade crumbling. You'd really do this? To your own family? Family? Mom laughed bitterly. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't try to destroy each other's dreams. I learned that too late with Stephanie, but I'm learning. Think carefully, brother dear, I said. Your reputation or your pride, which matters more? He reached for the paperwork Ellis had appeared with, hands shaking slightly. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Mom watched him sign. I'm done letting you control my life. I'm done with a lot of things. After Ronald stormed out, Mom collapsed into a chair. Did I just do that? You did. I sat beside her. Where did you get those emails? Juliet showed me how to access my old account. The ones Ronald made me use for the investment. He wasn't as careful as he thought. She smiled weakly. Turns out you can teach an old dog new tricks. Speaking of tricks, Taya leaned in. Wait until you see what we found about the factory's historical status. The Preservation Board is very interested. Later, I said, noting Mom's exhausted expression. Why don't you take the rest of the day off, Mom? You've earned it. No. She stood up, straightening her company badge. Corbin needs those quality control reports, and I haven't finished logging the new shipment. Mom, Stephanie. She touched my arm. For the first time in my life, I'm doing something that matters. Please don't take that away from me. I watched her walk back to her workstation, head held high despite everything. Employees nodded respectfully as she passed, no longer seeing her as just the boss's mother, but as someone who'd stood her ground. Well, Taya said, that was unexpected. Everything about this is unexpected. I looked at the signed papers in my hand, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Through the office windows, I could see the factory in the distance. Soon it would be ours, transformed from a symbol of greed into something hopeful. Kind of like what was happening with Mom, I realized. Sometimes the things we think are broken just need a chance to be rebuilt. The company gala transformed our warehouse into something magical. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and sustainable fashion displays showcased our journey from startup to success. Local artists, many from the Marshall Street neighborhood, had their work featured alongside our designs. I can't believe you did all this, Mom said, adjusting a rack of dresses. She'd insisted on helping with the setup, despite wearing an evening gown. The community involvement, the artist partnerships. Wait until you see what's next. I nodded toward the podium where Taya was testing the microphone. We're announcing the factory renovation plans tonight. Stephanie? Corbin rushed over, looking panicked. The caterers are short-staffed, the photographers running late, and there's a problem with the— I'll handle the caterers, Mom interrupted. I've managed enough charity galas to know how to run a kitchen. You handle the photographer, Corbin. Stephanie needs to greet the guests. I watched her stride toward the catering area, already calling out instructions with the same authority she'd once used to organize country club events. But this time, her power was being used for something meaningful. The warehouse doors opened, and guests began flowing in. Local business owners, fashion industry representatives, community leaders, and employees mixed and mingled. The energy was electric. Quite a turnout. Ellis appeared at my elbow. And wait until they hear about the training program we're launching at the factory. Is everything ready for the announcement? All set, though you might want to know. He hesitated. Ronald just arrived. I spun around. Sure enough, my brother stood in the entrance, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. But he wasn't alone. Francisco? I breathed. They weren't on the guest list, Taya said, appearing beside me. Want me to have security remove them? Before I could answer, Mom approached them. I moved closer, ready to intervene. What are you doing here? Mom's voice was low but firm. It's a public event, Ronald said, and we have a proposition. No. Mom's response was immediate. You've done enough damage. Clara, please. Francisco stepped forward. Just hear us out. We've been talking and we realize we were wrong about Stephanie's vision. Wrong? I couldn't help interjecting. You actively tried to destroy it. And now we want to help, Ronald said. The factory project? We have connections, investors who'd be interested in— Stop! I held up my hand. Look around, Ronald. See all these people? They're here because we built something real, something that helps their community. We did it without your connections, without your investors, and definitely without your approval. But the lady said stop. A new voice joined in. Juliet stood there, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but we're ready for the announcement, Stephanie. Mom turned to Ronald and Francisco. You can stay for the announcement. After that, I suggest you leave. This is Stephanie's night, and I won't let you ruin it. Their jaws dropped at Mom's words. I couldn't blame them. This wasn't the Clara Horton they knew. On stage, I looked out at the crowd, employees who'd become family, community members who'd trusted our vision, and there, in the front row, my mother, standing tall, proud, and finally on my side. 5 years ago, I started this company with a dream of ethical fashion. Today, we're announcing the next chapter. I gestured to the architectural renderings being unveiled. The Marshall Street factory will become not just a production facility, but a training center, offering paid apprenticeships to local residents. Every person who completes the program will be guaranteed a job. The crowd erupted in applause. Through the noise, I saw Ronald and Francisco slip out the back door. But none of this would be possible, I continued, without the people who believed in us, including someone who taught me my most valuable lesson, though not in the way she intended. I looked at Mom. She taught me that true success isn't about power or control. It's about lifting others up while staying true to yourself. Mom's eyes filled with tears as the crowd applauded again. Later, as guests mingled and celebrated, she found me by the displays. I was so wrong, she said softly, about everything. I wanted to control your life because I thought I knew best, but look at what you've created by following your own path. We're not done creating, I replied. The factory project needs someone to manage community relations, someone who knows how to organize people, handle difficult personalities, run events. She stared at me. Are you offering? If you're interested. You've proven yourself these past weeks. The job is yours if you want it. Mom straightened her shoulders, and for the first time, I saw not my former oppressor, but a woman ready to begin again. When do I start? The morning after the gala, I found Mom already at her desk, surrounded by community outreach proposals. She'd been there since dawn, according to the security guard. You don't have to prove anything, I said, setting a coffee beside her. I have everything to prove. She looked up, dark circles under her eyes. Especially after what I found last night. She pushed a folder across the desk. Inside were printouts of emails between Ronald and Francisco, dating back months before my divorce. Where did you get these? My hands shook as I read. Juliet helped me access Ronald's old backup drive. He never was good with technology. Mom's voice was tight. They planned it all, Stephanie. Francisco agreeing to our divorce, Ronald's investment scheme, even the factory purchase. It was all meant to force you back into their version of your proper place. The office door burst open. Ronald stormed in, Francisco right behind him. You had no right to access those files. Ronald's face was red with rage. Like you had no right to steal my money? Mom stood, her voice steady. To manipulate your sister's life? We were trying to help, Francisco protested. Stephanie was throwing away everything. I was building everything. I slammed the folder down. While you were plotting to break me, I was creating jobs, changing lives. The only thing I threw away was your control over me. It wasn't like that, Ronald started. Really? I pulled out an email. What's this then? Once she loses the business, she'll have no choice but to return to Francisco. Clara will see I was right about everything. Your words, Ronald. To Francisco, 3 months before you took Mom's money. Francisco at least had the decency to look ashamed. Ronald just straightened his tie. Business is business, he said coldly. Family is family. You chose business. No. Mom's voice cut through the tension. She chose herself, and I choose her. Mom, Ronald stepped toward her. Don't. She held up her hand. I've read everything, Ronald. Every email, every plan. You didn't just steal my money. You tried to destroy your sister's dreams because they didn't fit your narrow view of what a woman should be. I was protecting the family name. By committing fraud, I pulled out more documents. Ellis found everything, the fake investment papers, the shell companies, all of it. One phone call to the SEC and your career is over. You wouldn't dare. But Ronald's voice wavered. Try me. I met his gaze. Or you can sign these. I laid out the papers Ellis had prepared. Full restitution of Mom's money, complete transfer of the factory property, and a binding agreement to stay away from our business. This is blackmail, he sputtered. This is justice, Mom corrected. Sign them, Ronald. It's over. Francisco stepped forward. Stephanie, please, we can work something out. Like you worked out how to manipulate my divorce? I turned to him. Did you ever actually love me, or was I just a project to be managed? His silence was answer enough. Sign the papers, I repeated. Both of you. Francisco, you'll sign away any claim to company interests you might have through our previous marriage. Ronald, you'll make this right. And if we don't, Ronald challenged. Mom picked up her phone. Then I called the reporter who covered the factory story. I'm sure she'd love to hear about investment fraud and family betrayal. Your choice. They signed. As security escorted them out, Ronald turned back one last time. You've changed, he said to Mom. No, she smiled sadly. I've just finally become who I should have been all along. A mother who supports her daughter instead of trying to control her. After they left, Mom sank into her chair. I should have seen it sooner. All those years, I thought I was protecting you by pushing you toward their version of success. But now you're helping me achieve my version. I perched on her desk. The factory renovation starts next week. The community is counting on us. Us? She looked up, hope in her eyes. Us. I nodded at the proposals she'd been working on. These are good, by the way, especially the apprenticeship program for single mothers. I thought about what I would have needed if I'd been brave enough to choose my own path at your age. She straightened the papers. So, what's our next move? First, you're going to get some sleep. Then we're going to build something amazing. Together? Together. I helped her gather her things. And Mom, thank you for choosing me this time. She hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in years. I'll choose you every time from now on. I promise. As we walked out, the morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the future we were finally ready to build. Not as mother and daughter bound by obligation, but as women united by purpose and, at last, by love. The ribbon-cutting ceremony at the Marshall Street factory drew a bigger crowd than we'd expected. Local families filled the courtyard, many wearing clothes from our new community collection, pieces they'd helped design and create during the training program. Ready? Mom appeared beside me, clipboard in hand. She'd organized everything perfectly, as usual, but now her perfectionism served a greater purpose. Almost. I adjusted the microphone stand. Where's Taya with the apprenticeship announcements? Here. Taya rushed over, waving a folder. Sorry, had to make some last-minute changes. 3 more applicants qualified yesterday. Mom beamed. That makes 25 in our first class. Full scholarships, paid training, and guaranteed jobs. Plus childcare, Corbin added, joining us. The daycare center's already full. I looked around at what we'd built. The old factory had been transformed, its brick walls now housing state-of-the-art production facilities, classrooms, and community spaces. Solar panels glinted on the roof, and the courtyard garden bloomed with local plants. Stephanie, Julie called from the crowd, everyone's ready. Taking the microphone, I faced our community. Employees, old and new, stood alongside local residents and business owners. Even Francisco's mother was there, having chosen to support our vision after her son's betrayal came to light. A year ago, this building was going to become another symbol of displacement, I began. Today, it's a symbol of what's possible when we choose community over profit, growth over greed, and truth over appearances. Mom stepped forward, taking the microphone. My daughter taught me those lessons. I spent years trying to force her into a mold that never fit. But she showed me that real success isn't about maintaining appearances or following someone else's rules. It's about creating something meaningful. And you succeeded, called out Juliet from the crowd. The waiting list for the training program is already 3 months long. Laughter rippled through the audience. I saw Taya wiping away tears as she distributed the apprenticeship acceptance letters. The first piece I ever designed, I continued, was a simple dress made from recycled fabric. My mother called it a hobby. My brother called it a waste of time. My ex-husband called it a phase. But some of you here today saw something different. You saw potential. We saw hope, said Maria, one of our first apprentices, now a lead trainer. You gave us a chance when nobody else would. Mom touched my arm. The reporters are here. I nodded, spotting the news crews setting up. The same reporter who'd covered the factory controversy now stood ready with her microphone. But this time, we had a different story to tell. Today isn't just about opening a building, I said. It's about opening doors. Every person who walks through these doors will have the chance to rewrite their story, just like I rewrote mine, just like my mother rewrote hers. Speaking of rewriting stories, Mom added, the Foundation's first grant applications are ready for review. 10 small business loans for local entrepreneurs, focusing on sustainable practices and community impact. This was news to me. Mom, she smiled, consider it my way of paying forward what you taught me. I took what Ronald stole and turned it into something better. The Clara Horton Foundation will ensure that other dreamers get their chance. The crowd erupted in applause. As Mom cut the ribbon, I saw tears in her eyes. Not the carefully controlled emotions of her society days, but real, raw joy. Inside, apprentices proudly showed off their workstations to visitors. The production floor hummed with energy as demonstrations began. In the community room, local artists displayed their work alongside our designs. Quite a change from the guest room workshop, Taya said, linking her arm through mine. Quite a change from everything. I watched Mom leading a tour group, explaining our zero-waste policies with genuine enthusiasm. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. Speaking of better, Mom called out, these lovely people want to know about our expansion plans. Go, Taya nudged me. Be the boss lady. I'll make sure everyone gets their acceptance letters. Walking toward Mom and the tour group, I felt the weight of the journey that had brought us here. The pain of rejection, the sting of betrayal, the sweet satisfaction of success. All of it had led to this moment. The future of fashion isn't just about what we wear, I told the group. It's about who we become. Every piece we create here tells a story of transformation, of second chances, of choosing to build rather than break. Mom squeezed my hand as we continued the tour. No words were needed. We'd finally found our way, not to revenge, but to redemption, and that was better than any victory I could have planned.
What do you mean? Who is this person? I came to the funeral home after hearing that my sister had passed away, and when I looked into her casket, I saw a strange woman lying there. Where's my sister? While I was confused, my niece came over and handed me a small folded piece of paper. The moment I saw that, I had a bad feeling and grabbed her hand and tried to leave. At that moment, I heard my brother-in-law yelling from behind me. Why are you here? I told you not to come to the funeral. He glared at me like a demon, forcibly pulled me away from my niece, and threw me out of the funeral home. Why is the funeral for a stranger being held? Is my sister okay? After this, I came to know a very frightening fact. I'm Nadine, 34 years old. I married my husband, who was my classmate in high school, 2 years ago. Penelope, my sister 2 years older than me, married my brother-in-law 7 years ago and lived with Tara, who was 5 years old. Penelope and I grew up in a single-parent household, and our father passed away in a car accident shortly after I got married. Penelope took care of all the inheritance procedures, and I remember feeling like she was someone I could rely on. Penelope's family, who originally lived with my father in his home, inherited the house that was left and lived there. The first anniversary of my father's death had come to an end, and I gradually returned to my normal life, and before I knew it, about half a year had passed. One day, when I was busy with various things and had fewer opportunities to meet my beloved sister, I received a call from an unexpected person. I heard that your sister passed away. I'm sorry for your loss. What? What are you saying after not reaching out to me since forever? Penelope is your sister, right? Her address is your parents' house. The person on the phone was my friend from high school. She works at a funeral parlor, and when she saw the address on the death certificate, she contacted me thinking that I was probably grieving. Is the chief mourner's name Damien? That's right. I've never met your sister and didn't know her last name, so I didn't recognize her when I picked her up from the hospital. But it's weird that you didn't know. After the conversation with my friend, I called my sister's cell phone, hoping it was some kind of mistake, but I couldn't get through. No way, that can't be true. Feeling anxious, I immediately tried to contact my brother-in-law, but the message went to voicemail, so I left a message asking for a call back. What if my sister really died? I felt like the peaceful days I had finally regained were falling apart with a loud noise. The feeling of my heart being torn apart grows stronger and stronger as time passes. After that, my brother-in-law didn't call me at all, so when I finished work, I left a message on the answering machine saying, "I'm going to go to your house now," and my cell phone rang immediately. "I'm busy. What do you need?" "I heard that my sister passed away, but that can't be true, right?" "Oh, actually." I thought he would deny it right away, but my brother-in-law stammered for a moment, as if he was troubled. "What?" I didn't expect this reaction. As I swallowed and waited for the next words to be spoken, my brother-in-law slowly opened his mouth. "We just had a little argument, and Penelope got angry and we were fighting and she fell down the stairs herself. And then she passed away." "You're lying, aren't you?" "I can't believe it. Why didn't you tell me?" "Before Penelope passed away, she asked me not to tell anyone if anything happened. She probably didn't want people to know that she died due to her carelessness." My brother-in-law says that out of respect for my sister's feelings, they decided to hold the funeral only for her family. For this reason, he has kept it a secret even from his own relatives. No matter what you say, you should have contacted me. Anyway, I'll say my final goodbyes to her. Don't ever come to the funeral. That's what your sister wants. Even if I told you, you wouldn't be able to come because you don't know where the funeral home is. Well, bye now. My brother-in-law, who doesn't seem to be sad, sounded very irritated for some reason. It felt somewhat unnatural, but I decided that there was no point in pursuing it any further, so I decided not to call back. It's like I'm having a nightmare because I can't handle the sudden misfortune. I couldn't accept the reality that my sister, who I loved so much, was no longer in this world, so I sat on the bench for a while, unable to move. I did this for about an hour, then slowly got up and started walking. As the smile on my sister's face that I saw for the last time appears and disappears, my vision in front of my eyes becomes blurry and tears start to trickle down my face. "Sister, why did you leave so early? I never imagined losing my sister like this." On the day of the funeral, I had spent a sleepless night. My brother-in-law told me not to come, but I really wanted to see my sister off, so I asked my friend who informed me of her death about the funeral home, and I went there. "Please at least let me see you off one last time." When I quietly entered the venue, my brother-in-law was nowhere to be seen because the funeral had not yet begun. A friend of mine came by my side during a break from work. "I can't handle it all. Your brother-in-law is in a separate room to greet the monks. Now might be a good time to say goodbye." I asked a friend who was in charge of the funeral to guide me to the coffin where my sister was buried. The older sister in the photo has a bright smile on her face, as if she is talking to me. My sister is dead after all. I really wanted to say goodbye in person, so I looked into the coffin and found a woman I didn't know lying there. Who is this person? She looks like my sister, but she's not my sister. What's going on? What? Immediately after I backed away from the coffin, my 5-year-old niece gently handed me a crumpled piece of paper. I was surprised by this sudden thing, but when I opened it, it was an ordinary flyer for a rental warehouse. What's wrong with this? If you don't listen to what Daddy says, he told me he would put me in here too. Huh? What do you mean? However, my doubts were instantly dispelled by the next story told to me by my niece. I couldn't believe what I heard, and I instinctively knew something was wrong, so I grabbed my niece's hand and tried to run away from the funeral home. However, my brother-in-law noticed this and chased after me from behind. What are you doing? I told you not to come here. My brother-in-law quickly caught up to me and grabbed my arm, but I stopped walking in shock. I really wanted to meet my sister. Did you actually look inside the coffin? I just arrived, so it's not yet. My brother-in-law seems to be extremely concerned about the coffin. Little by little he approached me and tried to pull me out of the funeral home. What were you talking about with Tara? She was bored and wanted to go to the park. I didn't miss the relieved look on my brother-in-law's face as cold sweat dripped down his forehead, even though it wasn't hot. He's hiding something after all. We need to get Tara out of here right away. I gently looked at my niece and squeezed her hand, and she gave a small nod as if she had sensed something. Then my brother-in-law forcibly grabbed my niece's hand and pulled her away from me. I won't let you take Tara away. Get out now. If she doesn't leave on her own, I'll have the people at the funeral home kick you out. When I saw my brother-in-law speaking in a strong tone and raising his eyes to show his anger, I realized that there was no point in staying any longer, so I had no choice but to leave the place, leaving my niece with anxious eyes. That was quite a fight. Are you hurt? I'm okay. Besides, could you please watch over my niece? I understand. Leave it to me, my friend gave me assurance. If it were her, she would be at the venue throughout the funeral so she could watch over my niece. When I went outside, I looked again at the flyer about renting storage space that my niece had handed me. And while I was looking at it, something suddenly popped into my head. Is this what Tara mentioned earlier, that if something bad happens, this is the place to do it? I immediately took action to find out what my brother-in-law was hiding. Actually, the story I heard from my niece earlier was outrageous. It turns out that the woman in the coffin had come to his house before and been living there for a while. Be good friends with Daddy, they were even kissing. She even said that. Moreover, from that moment on, my sister disappeared, and when Tara asked him about it, he got very angry. No way, my sister is no longer in this world. I shook off the unpleasant thoughts and hurried to the parking lot and drove to the warehouse listed on the flyer. It was a deserted place a little far from a residential area. When I went to the warehouse management office, showed my ID and explained the situation, the person who was initially wary saw my serious expression and reluctantly handed me the key. When I stepped inside, I could feel the damp and unpleasant air. When I looked through the pile of junk, I saw my sister lying limp, buried under her belongings. Penelope. Stay strong. I quickly went to her side, picked her up, and removed the duct tape sealing her mouth. She slowly opened her eyes and said, "I was scared," and hugged me with her cold body. "I'm glad you are alive. What happened?" In response to my question, my sister began to speak. When she came to drop off her belongings to the storage unit after camping with her family, my sister, who found out that my brother-in-law was having an affair, interrogated him. At first, my brother-in-law was reluctantly cheating on her, but perhaps because he thought he couldn't get away with it, he suddenly lost his temper and started assaulting her, causing my sister to lose consciousness. When she woke up, she was trapped in this warehouse. It seemed helpless as the door was locked from outside and her hands and feet were tied so she couldn't make a sound. Knowing that my sister had gone through a horrible time of despair and fear made me furious at my brother-in-law. They pretended that you were dead and my brother-in-law even held your funeral. When my sister heard this, she looked blank, as if she didn't understand. When I told they were holding a funeral telling people it's hers, my sister put her hand over her mouth and whispered, "What a person. I can't let you make you feel like this. I'll make sure he'll be punished properly." As I was rubbing the coat I was wearing on my older sister, who was shivering from the cold, someone grabbed my shoulder as hard as she could. When I looked back in shock, my brother-in-law was standing there. "I followed you to see where you're going. Don't do anything unnecessary. If you're going to get in my way, would you like to go to the other world with her? Stop joking. I won't let you do what you want. There's no way you can beat my power." My brother-in-law tied me up with rope and tried to lock me in the warehouse again with my sister as I resisted hard. Penelope's funeral is almost over, so if I tell you, I'll throw you all deep in the mountains and feed you to animals. Now, I pretended to be sick and snuck out of the funeral, so I need to get back soon. Wait. Tell me why you lied about my sister and held a funeral for someone else. My brother-in-law thought we couldn't escape anymore, so he let out a loud laugh and started talking. After I locked Penelope here, I brought in the girl I was having an affair with to look after Tara, but she's strong-willed. When we got into a fight, she grabbed me, so I kicked her down the stairs. According to my brother-in-law, the person I was having an affair with was still breathing right after she fell down the stairs. That's when I had an epiphany. If the people around me thought Penelope was gone after the funeral, then it wouldn't be a problem to quietly get rid of the real Penelope later. That's why my brother-in-law waited until the woman he was having an affair with took her last breath before calling an ambulance. Moreover, she has no family. Apparently she thought it was convenient because no one would look for her even if she disappeared. My brother-in-law was grinning as he talked about his plans with satisfaction. Horrible. No. I'm a real genius. Well, that's all for chatting. It'll be dangerous if you make a fuss, so I'll give you the final blow. After telling a horrifying story, my brother-in-law slowly walked up to me and my sister, holding a weapon in his hand that he had apparently prepared in advance. His eyes are sharp, but the faint smile on his face can only be described as creepy. "I'll end this before you raise your voice." Just as my brother-in-law raised a weapon, the police entered the warehouse and said, "Drop what you have in your hands immediately." I'm glad they made it in time. Just in case, I called the police as soon as I found my sister. I thought that this would calm him down, but suddenly he started complaining to the police in a theatrical voice. "Actually, my wife has been missing for a while, but now she has been found safely. Who the hell would do something like this?" "Huh? Who are you talking about?" "Oh, she's so scared and confused, officer. I'll spare no effort in helping you catch the culprit." This is exactly what it means to have an open mouth that won't close. My anger boiled over at my brother-in-law's poor behavior at the time of her death, as he took advantage of his cheating partner and tried to lose Penelope as well. Ah, that's right. Well, I guess I can help catch the culprit as well. Huh. Everything you said until the police arrived was recorded. I gave the police officer the voice recorder that recorded our conversation. Huh. What are you doing? Oh, no, wait a minute. It's not my fault. It's all a misunderstanding. Let me explain. My brother-in-law was crying and shouting, "I'm not going with the police," but they treated him coldly and put him in a police car. I then explained to the officers what happened. Someone else's funeral is being held at the funeral home, faking it to be my sister's. Please head over there immediately. When they learned of my story, they immediately rushed to the funeral home. My sister was able to talk but was very weak, so she was taken to the hospital by ambulance. I went back to the funeral home because my sister was worried about Tara. When I went there, I saw that Tara's friend had been staying close to Tara, who looked worried. When she saw me, Tara ran over to me and hugged me. Her body was trembling and her eyes were filled with tears. Wow! That was scary. You really stayed strong. Hey, where's Mom? Is Mom okay? I found your mom. She's safe. Let's go to the hospital where Mom is. In the car on the way to the hospital, my niece started talking about what had happened. After camping, Mom and Dad went to the warehouse to drop off our things, but Dad was the only one who came back. He said she had to work suddenly, but Dad was sweating so much it was scary. I thought it was weird because he made a scary face. I see. I guess you were worried. But why did you have a flyer today? It was at home, so I looked at the map on it and thought I'd sneak out during the funeral to see it. I thought maybe my mom was there. A 5-year-old child sensed something was wrong and was trying to help her mother. It was impossible for Tara to go looking for Penelope alone, but I can't believe how much courage it took for her to make such a decision. It made me sad to think that the few days when my sister didn't come home must have been extremely long for my niece and she was anxious. When we arrived at the hospital, Tara spotted my sister and immediately ran over to her. "Tara, I'm sorry to have made you worry," my sister lovingly caressed Tara's crying face, smiling over and over again, "It's okay now." She looked so happy and I was relieved. I'm so glad I didn't lose my sister. My sister received treatment at the hospital, and her condition gradually improved, and she was allowed to leave the hospital in about a week. My brother-in-law was arrested on charges of leaving my sister alone and killing the woman he was having an affair with without helping her. From now on, he will carry a heavy cross and live in a cold, closed prison. Of course, my sister divorced my brother-in-law and took custody of my niece. It is said that my brother-in-law received $30,000 in compensation from the money he had saved to give to the woman he had an affair with. I discussed with my husband that it would not be comfortable for my sister and my niece to live alone in the future, so we decided to live together after she was discharged from the hospital. Currently, my life is full of happiness with my kind husband, beloved sister, and cute niece. On a hot early June day, I was getting ready to pick up my granddaughter Lily. As I grabbed my car keys by the front door, I glanced up at the Nevada sky, brilliant and bright. The thermometer already read 86 degrees Fahrenheit, but thanks to Reno's characteristic dry air, it wasn't too uncomfortable. The geraniums in my front porch planters were blooming bright red. I'm Patricia Carter, and I've spent 30 years teaching in this city. First as an elementary school teacher, then as an assistant principal, I've watched countless children grow up. Now retired, I do a bit of real estate work, and nothing brings me more joy than when my former students come looking for houses. Just last week, a student from 20 years ago signed a contract, saying, "I trust any house you recommend, teacher." I've lived in this house in the De Monte Ranch district for 15 years. The neighbors are warm and friendly, and weekend barbecues in our yards have become a tradition. In this quiet residential area with the Sierra Nevada mountains as a backdrop, picking up and dropping off Lily has become my daily routine. Every morning, I have breakfast at Denny's. This morning too, I was checking Lily's pickup schedule while spreading out the newspaper at my regular table. Betty, the waitress, brought over the usual black coffee and an English muffin. The local paper reported on a casino-related debt collection incident. While not uncommon in this city, for some reason, I felt compelled to clip the article this morning. Grandma. In the evening, when I went to pick her up, Lily came running toward me in front of the McKinley Arts and Culture Center, clutching her piano lesson bag. This tall 10-year-old is the daughter of my son Mark and his wife, or perhaps soon-to-be ex-wife Jennifer. With her sensitive nature, she's known as quite the accomplished pianist at her music school. At last year's recital, she captivated the audience with a perfect rendition of a Mozart sonata. "How was your lesson today?" "I played Chopin's Etude perfectly." The teacher praised me. Pride mixed in Lily's voice as she climbed into the back seat. This is one of my greatest joys, watching my granddaughter grow up from such a close distance. Lily has her mother's green eyes and her father's straight nose. The neighbors often say she takes after me in personality. But lately, a dark shadow has been creeping into this daily life. Mark and Jennifer's divorce mediation had begun. Jennifer works as a dealer at the Grand Sierra Resort, while Mark serves as a project manager at a construction company. Their relationship seemed fine on the surface, but it suddenly grew cold 6 months ago. Jennifer's behavior changed around that time too. Her night shifts increased, her complexion worsened, and her voice on the phone seemed somehow hollow. Discussions about child support and custody have become contentious. Mark is demanding full custody, while Jennifer strongly resists. Meanwhile, I've taken on the responsibility of driving Lily around. Last month, I bought a used Honda CR-V specifically for these pickup duties. The dealer assured me, it's 3 years old, but in excellent condition. "Hey, Grandma," Lily leaned forward from the back seat. "Mom came to the house yesterday." I studied my granddaughter's expression in the rearview mirror. Early evening, when Mark would be away from work. Jennifer rarely visits outside of court-appointed visitation days. That's unusual. Did she say anything? No, but she was acting strange. Her eyes were really red, and she hugged me really tight and said, "Watch out for car noises." When I heard those words, a chill ran down my spine. But I couldn't understand the source of this unease. At that time, I couldn't imagine this would be the last of our peaceful daily routine. The morning news article about casino-related debt collection crossed my mind. But since such incidents weren't uncommon in this city, I didn't give it much thought. The slight unease I felt when starting the engine, I attributed to not being used to the new car. The brakes seemed a bit less responsive than usual, but I convinced myself it was just my imagination. In Reno, on the verge of summer vacation, our fate was about to take a dramatic turn as we approached Mount Rose Highway. In the distance, the garish neon signs of the casinos glowed mechanically, as if foreseeing the tragedy to come. The anomaly occurred during Tuesday's twilight hours. I was preparing dinner. Through the kitchen window, I could see the sun setting behind the Sierra Nevada mountains. While making chicken pot pie and thinking about tomorrow's schedule, my cell phone rang with a call from Mark. "Mom, have you heard from Lily?" My son's voice was higher than usual, urgent. "No." "What's wrong?" Jennifer apparently came to the house. According to the court agreement, today isn't her visitation day. I immediately turned off the oven. They were in the middle of a custody dispute. Actions contrary to the agreement could affect the trial. "I'll go check on them right away." A 5-minute drive through the quiet residential streets of the DeMonte Ranch district. When I arrived at Mark's house, the sun was already setting. An unfamiliar car was parked in front of the 2-story White House. Jennifer's new car, perhaps. But looking closer, I noticed it had no license plates. As I approached the front door, I heard voices from inside. "Promise me, Lily. Don't tell anyone. Especially not your grandmother." But Grandma would. "No." Suddenly, the conversation stopped. Lily had opened the door. Behind her stood a woman who looked nothing like the Jennifer I knew. The casino dealer who usually maintained perfect makeup and sophisticated attire now had disheveled hair and bloodshot eyes. Instead of her designer suit, she wore a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans. She seemed to be struggling to control her trembling hands. "Patricia." She called my name, started to say something more, then suddenly fell silent. "Jennifer, are you feeling unwell?" "Yes, a bit." She evaded, then hugged Lily tightly. The embrace felt like a final farewell. "I love you, Lily. Don't forget that." Then, turning to me, she whispered, "Please protect her," before hurriedly leaving the house. In Lily's hand remained a small piece of paper. It contained what looked like an encoded message written hastily on the back of an old receipt. That night, I stayed in Lily's room with her. She seemed more anxious than usual and had trouble falling asleep. The next morning, in the kitchen bathed in morning light, I was reading the newspaper. There was a small article on page 3. Casino-related debt collection cases surge, underground loan shark organization suspected. According to the article, high-value debt collections targeting casino employees had increased in recent months. Many victims had initially borrowed from legal consumer finance companies before turning to loan sharks for some reason. When I noticed my coffee had gone cold, the clock already showed 7 a.m. I had to drive Lily today. It hadn't even been 2 weeks since I started driving her around. On my way to the garage, our neighbor Robert Wilson called out to me. Before retirement, he had worked as an auto mechanic. "Patricia, how's the new car running?" "Well, it's been acting a bit strange since yesterday." How so? The brakes seem a bit soft. Just then, my cell phone rang. It was an email from an unknown number. Opening it, I saw Jennifer as the sender. The brakes on the car Lily rides in. The message cut off there. I tried to reply, but it wouldn't go through. My heart started racing. Entering the garage, I noticed an unfamiliar oil smell. When I started the engine, it made a louder noise than usual. But there was no time. I had to pick up Lily. My face in the rearview mirror suddenly looked older than usual. As I drove toward Mount Rose Highway, my mind swirled with ominous premonitions about Jennifer's strange behavior and the meaning of her cut-off message. The cluster of casino buildings overlooking Reno felt particularly mechanical and eerie this morning. At 3 p.m., when I parked at the McKinley Arts and Culture Center parking lot, my watch made a clicking sound. That sound would later feel like the prelude to the nightmare that was about to begin. Unusually, Lily came out late from her piano practice room. Instead of her usual light-hearted skip with her sheet music bag, she walked slowly, as if lost in thought. "Sorry, Grandma. I got caught up talking with the teacher." "What were you talking about?" "We were choosing a song for the Mother's Day recital." "But..." She cut off mid-sentence. Mother's Day. That was now the most taboo topic between Mark and Jennifer. About 15 minutes after we got onto Mount Rose Highway, the car started acting clearly strange. It started as a slight vibration. Just a little trembling in the steering wheel. But it gradually grew stronger. Even when I reduced speed, the vibration didn't subside. If anything, it seemed to be getting worse. "Grandma." Lily's voice came from the back seat. "Something's wrong with this car." Her face in the rearview mirror looked less worried and more like she had realized something. As if she had been waiting for this moment. "It's not just imagination," Lily continued. "Mom said to watch out for car noises." Just then, my cell phone rang. Answering on hands-free, an unfamiliar male voice came through. "Is this Patricia Carter?" "This is Detective Collins from the Reno Police Department." "Are you currently driving a Honda CR-V?" "Yes, I am." "Pull over to a safe spot immediately." Before he could finish, I pressed the brake pedal as hard as I could. However, instead of slowing down, the car began to accelerate. "Lily, fasten your seatbelt tight." I kept desperately pressing the brake. But the pedal began to thrash under my foot as if it had a life of its own. The speedometer needle climbed, 60 miles, 65 miles, 70 miles. Sirens began wailing behind us. Police cars. But their presence now brought not relief but greater terror enveloping us. "Get out of the vehicle immediately." The shout from the police car cut through the wind. Clear panic mixed in their voice. Lily had started crying in the back seat. Mom said, "If the car starts acting strange, jump out right away." In that instant, everything connected. The morning email, Jennifer's strange behavior, the article about casino-related debt collection. And most importantly, that piece of paper Lily had been clutching that night. What was written on it must have been a vehicle identification number. A police car pulled up alongside us. A young officer was desperately giving hand signals. Beyond him, another police car. I could see the officer inside shouting something into their radio. "Mrs. Carter." The officer's voice echoed in the car. "There's an emergency vehicle waiting area 500 yards ahead. Hold on until then." I gripped the steering wheel desperately. My palms were sweaty, my arms shaking. But I had never felt more clear-headed than at that moment. I had to protect Lily. Jennifer had been trying to warn us about this. The waiting area came into view. At that moment, a loud noise erupted from the engine, and black smoke began rising. The car's vibration reached its peak, filling the interior with creaking sounds as if everything was about to fall apart. "Lily, listen to me carefully," I said, trying to appear as calm as possible. "When we enter the waiting area, open your door and jump out immediately. The officers will be waiting." "What about you, Grandma?" "I'll get out of the car right after you." I knew those words wouldn't come true. Someone had turned this car into a machine from hell. And that someone had meticulously prepared to ensure the driver couldn't easily escape. 100 yards to the waiting area. Police cars moved in from both sides, escorting our car like guardrails. An ambulance was waiting beyond them. "Lily, ready. Jump when I give the signal." "No, Grandma. Let's go together." "It's okay, I promise I'll get out of the car after you." I held the steering wheel with my left hand and unlocked Lily's door with my right. 50 yards to the waiting area. "Now, Lily." I deliberately turned the wheel right. The centrifugal force opened Lily's door, and she was thrown out of the car. Officers rushed to catch her. At that moment, my car began to accelerate again. The driver's side door was now firmly locked, showing no signs of opening. The engine roared, and the car began to run wild, completely out of control. All I could do was pray. Pray that Lily was safe, and that Jennifer would forgive my decision. Just then, a new email arrived on my phone. The sender was Jennifer again. "Patricia, that car has been tampered with. Because I kept refusing, they were going to take Lily's life instead of mine, but I believed you would understand. As a mother, I did what I could do last. I've notified the police. I'm sorry. And thank you." The car plunged into darkness. But strangely, my heart was at peace. My granddaughter was safe. And Jennifer's true love had been revealed through this incident. I was certain Lily had a mother she could be proud of. The police sirens grew distant. The ambulance lights were flashing. And the sound of helicopters coming from somewhere. As I thought this might be my final music, the world went black. Room 406 at Renown Regional Medical Center. The Sierra Nevada mountains are visible from the window. I regained consciousness 3 days after the accident. Fortunately, I had no serious injuries. They said the engine had completely shut down just before the car hit the guardrail. "It's a miracle," said Dr. Sarah Brown, my attending physician. "The brake lines were completely severed. It's amazing you maintained control at that speed." The room was overflowing with flowers from my former students. Red carnations, white lilies, and yellow gerberas. Their flower meanings: gratitude, purity, hope. The students I taught over 30 years were now giving me courage. Lily, who had held my hand all night without letting go, was sleeping beside the bed. Mark sat in the chair opposite her, reading a newspaper. The room's air carried a faint scent of flowers mixed with the hospital's characteristic antiseptic smell. Every time a nurse came to change the four, Lily would wake up and anxiously peer at my face. Each time, I would smile and whisper, "It's all right." A week later, I was discharged. When I returned home, there was a letter from Jennifer. The envelope was made of quality paper, with my name written carefully on the front. "Patricia, you were my salvation. Thank you for protecting Lily. I'm entering a rehabilitation program. I want to become a mother who can face her daughter with pride someday." Yesterday, I had a long talk with my counselor. The debts, the gambling, perhaps it was all an escape from reality. But my love for Lily was always real. I want to use those feelings as support for my life going forward. That evening, Mark came to announce an important decision. On the table were Lily's favorite chocolate chip cookies, with the aroma of coffee in the air. "I've decided to withdraw the divorce. Jennifer needs a chance at rehabilitation. And Lily needs her mother." A month later, Jennifer received weekend leave from the rehabilitation facility. The destination was McKinley Arts and Culture Center. It was the day of Lily's piano recital. During a visit at the facility, Jennifer confided in me. "At the facility, I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to meditate. Then I write letters to Lily. I can't send them yet, but they're keeping them safe until the day I can give them to her." Chopin's Farewell echoed through the venue. In the audience, I held Jennifer's hand. Tears glistened in her eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. When Lily finished performing, the venue filled with warm applause. And on stage, the young girl smiled straight at her mother sitting in the front row. "There are new forms of family," I said to Mark while driving home. "They don't have to be perfect. What matters is that everyone keeps moving forward." The sun was setting over Reno. Today, the casino neons seemed to shine like beacons of hope. Our car was driving slowly but surely toward a new future. 6 months after that incident. Now, Lily visits Jennifer on weekends. Mark is gradually rebuilding his relationship with his ex-wife. And I've started volunteering to read books at the rehabilitation facility every Wednesday. The other day, I saw Jennifer sitting in a circle with other residents at the facility, engaged in serious discussion. She was sharing her experiences, trying to support others in similar situations. In her presence, I sensed a new kind of strength. Lily is now practicing a new piece for the Mother's Day recital, Debussy's Clair de Lune. "I'm playing it for Mom," she says proudly. Her profile shone brighter than ever before. Life sometimes presents us with unimaginable trials. But there's always light beyond them. We learned this truth firsthand. And now, that light continues to gently illuminate our family's new path forward. I'm writing this story on a spring afternoon, 1 year after the incident. Outside my window, the geraniums are beginning to bloom again. On my desk sits a handmade card from Lily. In her small handwriting, it reads, "Thank you, Grandma. We're going to be all right." Traveling with family. It is something that can be enjoyed without any care. It is a treasure that will become a happy memory. On this trip, I was suddenly unable to go, and my husband and daughter had to go alone. After that trip, my daughter's behavior was strange. She was cheerful and seemed to enjoy going to school. For some reason, she stopped going to school. She has been staying in her room and I am very worried about her. Then, my daughter suddenly collapses. This is not normal. I am so anxious that my heart is about to burst and I call the paramedics. My name is Madeline. My husband's name is Dennis. Our daughter, who is in the second year of junior high school, is Wanda. My husband and I both work for a company. I think our family gets along well, and my daughter has grown up to be a bright and nice girl, so I have no complaints. My daughter does not dislike my husband just because she is an adolescent, and our relationship is as good as it has been since she was little. Of course, my daughter and I are like friends. We plan a family vacation once or twice every year. As my daughter gets older, I wonder how long she will stay with us. But I am happy that she hasn't shown any pretense of doing so yet. We are planning another trip with our family of 3. I'm sorry, but I have to work tomorrow. I have to work tomorrow. What? Tomorrow is a trip you're going on. I had some trouble at work. I'm so sorry. I see. I guess it can't be helped. Do you want to cancel? No, you should go with you guys since you've come all this way. It would be a waste of the cancellation fee. Huh? Wanda, is that okay? Yes. I'm going to go with Dad. Have fun on your father-daughter day. I wanted to go with all 3 of us, but I had a job I couldn't miss. It happens sometimes, doesn't it? Unfortunately for me, but my husband and daughter will enjoy themselves this time. I asked them to take a lot of pictures, and I went to the job that had suddenly appeared. I was reluctant to leave, but there are some things you can't avoid. On the day of the event, my husband and daughter see me off before I leave home. It's a little sad, but it's probably good that it's just my husband and daughter, because it's a rare moment for them. Everyone was smiling and waving at each other, and I felt that my daughter had grown up without being selfish. During the 3-day trip, I occasionally send messages to my daughter and report on what's going on. We would talk about where we had arrived and what we had eaten, and I would enviously handle the trouble. On the 3rd day, Sunday, after a break from work, my husband and daughter came home. My husband puts his large luggage in the living room and exhales loudly. I'm home. Home is the best. Welcome home. You must be tired. I'll tidy up. I take her bag from my daughter and try to put out the laundry. I'm tired, so I'm going to take a rest. She immediately went to her room. I smile, thinking that this is proof that I have been enjoying myself well. School starts again tomorrow. Now I need to rest. The next day, the usual Monday, arrives. I make breakfast and wake up my husband and daughter. My husband comes out quietly, but my daughter doesn't show her face. I wondered if she was still tired, so after 10 minutes, I went back to her room. Wanda, you're gonna be late. I knocked on the door and urged her to wake up, but there was no answer. I knocked again and opened the door and called her. My daughter was lying on her bed with the covers over her head, not moving. Hey, Wanda. What's wrong? I'm not feeling well, so I'm taking the day off. Oh, you have a cold. I understand. Come over if you can eat. My daughter usually enjoys going to school and is able to study reasonably well. It is rare that she wants to take a day off on her own, so without question I called the school to inform them of her absence. I leave my daughter's food in the kitchen and go to work. I am worried, but my daughter is doing well. I told her, call me if you need anything. In the evening, I hurry home. I have not heard from my daughter all day. I felt bad about waking her up, so I didn't send her a message. When I entered the house, which was quiet as if no one was there, I found the living room and kitchen as they were when I left in the morning. I wondered if my daughter had eaten anything. With a sense of urgency, I went to my daughter's room. Wanda, are you okay? Do you want me to get you some jelly or something? No. I don't want it. If you're still sick, do you want me to take you to the hospital? You don't have to. My daughter's voice through the door was weak, but her reply gave me relief. I have made something for supper that looks good for digestion, but my daughter has not yet come out of her room. I put the meal on a tray and brought it to her room. I brought you some food. Leave it there. We had a short conversation and I put the tray in front of the door. I talked to my husband who came home afterwards, but he said it happens and there is no solution. Come to think of it, I haven't seen my daughter's face even once today. Not only am I worried about her, but I also feel as if my own mental health is being drained if I don't see my daughter in good health. I have wandered around the hallway many times, but it is a blessing in disguise. The food I put in front of my daughter's room has been touched. She seems to have eaten about half of it. I replaced the bottles of tea, the tray of food, and talked to my daughter. I'll leave your drink here, okay? Okay. Thank you. After a night of boredom, I prepare breakfast and talk to my husband and daughter. Again, only my husband comes out. In front of my daughter's room, I talk to her as I did yesterday. My daughter complains that she wants to rest, just like yesterday. She is probably lying about not feeling well. Today, she clearly said, I don't want to go to school. I asked her about it, but all I got was this: there are things you don't want to tell your parents. I think it's normal for her to have things she doesn't want to tell her parents. I know in my head that this is different from when she was in elementary school, but I wonder if something happened at school. But last weekend, my daughter's behavior was normal. I am so nervous and wondering what is going on. I can't ask any more questions right now. I'll make breakfast for you. Yes. As I ate my meal with my husband, all we talked about was our daughter. My husband said that our daughter was having a good time during the trip. There were no shocking incidents, and he doesn't have any idea what is going on. I guess there is no way for anyone but him to know, but it is the parents who have to think about it. What if she continues to miss school? What if she stays withdrawn? No matter how much I worry, the situation will not change. I have been truant for 3 days now. Is this the right response? I asked myself many times. But I think that forcibly taking them to school or hospital or pulling them out by force is not the same thing. I came to think that it would be better if she's alive. I found evidence that she took a bath only once during the day when no one was around. She also takes a little bit of food. I see her only occasionally, but that is enough for now. Just as I was thinking that, she stopped going to school for the 4th day. When I returned home from work, I heard a faint groan from my daughter's room. I knocked on her door and asked her what was wrong, but there was no answer. Wanda. Hey. I'll open up, okay? I notice that my palpitations are getting more intense. The moment I open the door and see my daughter, my heart squeezes tight. She was curled up on the floor moaning in agony. She was sweating profusely, and it looked like something out of the ordinary. Hey, Wanda. What? What's wrong? I ran up to my daughter and put my hand on her. As soon as I touched her back, she jerked and screamed. Then I instantly rolled up my daughter's clothes a little and looked down her back. It was in bad shape. The skin was peeling, red and swollen, and some parts were infected. I was so shocked that all my internal organs were crushed. I didn't feel alive. My daughter suddenly became quiet. She became limp and weak. She fainted. Wanda. I cried and called 911. I was in a panic, but I managed to call the paramedics. The time it took for help to arrive seemed like an eternity, and I felt like I was being swallowed up by frustration. I only remember bits and pieces of this area. My daughter was rushed to the hospital, where she was treated and told by the doctors that she was all right. I was told that if it had been a day later, she would have been in danger, and I was extremely upset. I forget to call my husband and hold my daughter's hand the whole time. My daughter wakes up and I'm in tears again. I can't take it anymore. I ask her directly what happened. Where's Daddy? I'm sorry, I'll call him right away. No. Don't call him. Please. I wondered why she was in such a hurry, but I decided to ask her about the situation first. Then, will you tell me? Actually, I could not believe my ears. My daughter told me that my husband had assaulted her. A father assaulting his daughter to the point of almost killing her. How was this possible? My mind couldn't catch up with what I was hearing, so I started digging deeper. Again, I could not believe my ears. My husband was having an affair, and I had seen it happen. The adulterer was my daughter's homeroom teacher. My husband told me to keep quiet about it. He tried to control my daughter with violence and fear. At that time, my daughter met her homeroom teacher near the train station when she and my husband were leaving for a trip. Without even saying hello, my husband told her to wait there because he had to talk with her homeroom teacher, and disappeared somewhere. She waited for a while, but when he returned too late, she looked for her husband and homeroom teacher. She found them hiding in the shadows and was so surprised that she let out a cry. Oh my God! Wanda, I told you to wait. My husband and her homeroom teacher were hugging and kissing each other. The teacher was flustered and my husband was angry. The homeroom teacher left awkwardly, and the daughter and my husband began to travel together. The daughter repeatedly asked her husband to stop cheating on her. And it was her homeroom teacher. It is natural that she does not want to go to school. Two people I trusted at once became untrustworthy. It is no wonder that she distrusts people. In an attempt to correct this, she tries to persuade my husband to do something about it. My daughter is a straight shooter who cannot turn a blind eye. This honesty has led to disaster. If she had kept quiet about everything, even the lies, she might not have been treated so horribly. My daughter says that my husband's mood got worse and worse, and by the time they arrived at the hotel, he already looked like the devil. Every time she said something, she was slapped or kicked by him. Being alone in a closed room must have been incredibly scary. My husband, who began drinking in the room, escalated the assault. He took out his own belt and began to beat his daughter's back. He repeatedly whipped her with the belt, and eventually the metal part of the belt hurt her. At the end of the trip, my husband grinned and said horrible things. "If you say anything to Madeline, you won't get away with it. If I don't keep everything a secret, Madeline and you will both get hurt." My daughter told me everything in tears. I accept it while wiping away the tears that won't stop. This is impossible. What my husband did should never have happened. I decided to stay at the hospital with my daughter who was going to be hospitalized. My husband called and texted me, but I ignored all of them. I did not sleep at all that day and thought about what to do in the future. My daughter and husband must be completely cut off. So I took a few days off. If my daughter is in the hospital, my husband may think he has found out about the affair and violent behavior. There are things I need to do before my husband finds out. Once there, I go home alone. I prepare a meal for 2 at night and wait for my husband. "Oh, you're back. What happened to you yesterday?" "I'm worried." "Sorry, my mom fell ill, so I went to see her with Wanda." "I see." I was surprised because I didn't see anybody at home. "How was your mom?" "She seems fine now." "I'm sorry I didn't check my phone at all." "So, has Wanda in her room again?" "Oh, yes. I'll leave her alone for a while." I lied about my mother, apologizing in my mind. I let him think our daughter is in the room and the rest of the time I treat him the same as before. While my husband is in the bath, I steal a look at his phone. It is locked, but I know the PIN. I guessed it was my husband's birthday by the movement of his finger. I successfully unlocked it at once. I take a picture of the contents of the message app with my own phone. Evidence of infidelity that comes out a lot. My face contorted at the disgusting exchanges. My husband went out on Saturday saying he had to work. I know he will meet with his homeroom teacher because I saw the message. This will be another good one to shoot. I followed my husband, went to see my daughter, and stayed busy even though it was my day off. When a date was set for my daughter to be discharged from the hospital, I sprang into action. I called the middle school and told them when she would be able to resume school. I asked my husband to leave work early because the three of us were going to talk at school after school once together. There is a special staff meeting in the staff room, which I had requested from the principal and vice principal. When the 3 family members and I visited the staff room, my daughter's homeroom teacher came running up to us. "Oh, Wanda, you're here. I'm so glad you came. I'm so glad. Your father and mother too." My husband and homeroom teacher are connected, so they must have known I was coming today. I was disgusted by the happy homeroom teacher. "This way, please. Have a seat." We were led to a position where we could see the teachers and sat in chairs prepared by the vice principal. My husband and I are seated side by side. My daughter goes to another room. Well, you would like to have a word with you, Madeline. Please. My husband turns to me with a "what?" gesture, but I let him pass and start talking. The reason why my daughter stopped going to school is because her father and her homeroom teacher were dating. What? I say simply. The whole staff room started to groan and become noisy. What are you talking about? There's no way, that's ridiculous. I project my phone onto the TV screen. The head teacher had it ready for me. There are pictures of my husband and homeroom teacher arm in arm, eating at a restaurant, and walking into a hotel. And then there are the messages. When can I see you again? Let's take a private open-air spa together. I read out the message. Don't. Stop. The homeroom teacher stops me. My husband is just upset. I will continue. As you can see, they are having an affair. It's understandable that my daughter would not want to see her teacher now that she knows that, isn't it? In the midst of the din, the principal stands up. I then show the next picture. This picture is of my daughter's back. She could have died from these injuries. The wounds match those on my husband's belt, so I'm going to leave the rest to the police. You did too much. My life is over, isn't it? You. My husband jumped on me. He grabbed my arm roughly and looked at me with bloodshot eyes. I wondered if he had become desperate after everything had been exposed. My husband was seized by the vice principal and male teachers who were around, but he was violently resisting. It was determined that the situation was dangerous and the principal called the police. In the noisy room, the husband was yelling wildly and the homeroom teacher was crying and screaming. Several teachers are sobbing over my daughter's injuries. Police officers arrive and secure my husband. I asked for strict disciplinary action against the adulterous homeroom teacher and went to pick up my daughter. Well, my husband was arrested and lost his job as it was. It seems that my husband's workplace caused a great deal of trouble for the offender. I don't think he can go back to the same industry. He raised his hand against my precious daughter, so as far as I am concerned, I would like to see the maximum punishment. I would like to say one more sarcastic remark: you are lucky you got away with this much. I heard that my daughter's former homeroom teacher has lost her teaching job and has fled back to the countryside. I have filed a claim for compensation to follow up on this. I heard that even in the hometown where she was born and raised, she is now a shut-in at her parents' house. I divorced my husband and received the entire property of the house as alimony. I sold the house we lived in and my ex-husband's personal belongings, and my daughter and I moved into my parents' home. I was given special consideration so that I could homeschool. I send my daughter to school when she wants to contribute. Once my daughter is settled, I would like to discuss with her where she wants to go and what kind of house she wants to live in. I heard that the scar on my daughter's back is something that will stay with her for the rest of her life. Still, she can make her own decisions someday and undergo plastic surgery. My cowardly ex-husband who assaulted her by going after where I couldn't see him. Now I will think that I can hide it with clothes and it will be just a little bit better. I want you to read it without telling your children. The president had asked me to do so. 2 weeks after my husband passed away suddenly from exhaustion. His secretary said it and handed me a letter. When I checked it, I found a letter thanking me and asking me to go to a certain warehouse. I followed the instructions in the letter and went to the warehouse. There I found a young man about the same age as my son. The young man smiled as he led me on a tour of the house and told me a shocking truth. I am Zaida, and when I was 35 years old, I married my current husband, Asher. It was my first marriage, but it was the second one for my husband. He had a 4-year-old child at the time. His name was Oscar. He was a cute little boy with slender arms and legs. We met because of our jobs. I was in sales and he was a sales representative. I had given up on marriage because I was over 30 years old and I had a disease that made it impossible for me to have children. I want you to marry me. His eyes were serious as he said this, and I could not take my eyes off of them. But I am an old woman now. I can't even have children. I don't care about that. You are a good worker, and above all, have a good heart. I told you I have a son, didn't I? I want him to know his mother. I believe you can take good care of him. Besides, you are very attractive as a woman. Looking back on it now, it sounds like a toothless line, but at the time, I gladly accepted his proposal. Perhaps it was the fact that I could have a child that made me happier than anything else. Before I got married, I met his son. At first he hid behind his father, but as we talked and ate together, he gradually opened up to me. Can I call you mother? Can you call me mother? I've never had a mother before, so I'd like to call, no. The way he tilted his head in that way was adorable and made my heart ache. I hugged the boy tightly. Looking forward to being with you from now on, Oscar. Yay! Bring me into the circle, too. He hugged me tightly on top of us as we hugged each other. I had thought that I would have to live alone because I could no longer hope to have children, but he told me that there was a new kind of family. Then we got married. My husband had a dream. He wanted to start his own business and become successful. I wanted to support his dream, so I continued to work and spent my busy days doing housework, raising children, and working. My husband often struggles with cash flow and I have to work frantically to make ends meet. When sales were inevitably slow, there were months when my husband had no income. I didn't blame him for it, and we struggled to make ends meet, breaking down his monthly salary as well as the deposits and insurance we had accumulated up to that point. Even in such a situation, my son listened to me and was a fine person. I could not afford to send him to cram school, but he studied hard and maintained good grades. Thanks to my mom who takes care of my studying. You are working hard, don't you? I just stand by and watch. I study hard because you're always there for me, even though you're busy. He humbly said that even though his ability is his own. I accepted his words, even though I felt a little uncomfortable. And then, after 20 years of hard work, my husband's efforts finally bore fruit. His business took off and he became the president of the company. I was really happy and called for a family celebration. I baked a cake, which I don't usually make that day, and prepared a slightly pretentious menu for the dinner table. I really wanted to go to a restaurant, but I still thought ahead and decided to save money, so I prepared a special menu that we could eat at home. My son was very happy to see such a dining table. But, Dad, I heard he can't come home today. I see. It can't be helped if the star of the show isn't here. Yes. Let's eat, Mom. Today's food looks really delicious. And the cake is my favorite cake with strawberries on it. Seeing me depressed, my son tried to cheer me up and spoke to me in a happy voice. I was cheered up by that, and we finished dinner together that day. When my husband came home the next day, he smelled a slight scent of alcohol. "This smell, have you been drinking?" No, it's just that everyone at work is celebrating with me. I'm going to take a shower. My husband was somewhat distant and hurriedly headed for the bathroom. I was suspicious, but started to get ready and sent my husband and son out of the house. A few days later, my cell phone displayed the phone number of my husband's company. I answered the phone, but I was suspicious. Is that his wife? The president of the company. It was a call to inform me that my husband had collapsed at work. I rushed to the hospital, but could not get there in time. By the time I arrived at the hospital, my husband had already passed away. I heard from his secretary that he had been working very hard. The cause of death was probably overwork. I just listened intently to the doctor's words telling me so. Then my son rushed to the hospital and we broke down in tears, hugging each other. The sudden death of my husband of 20 years was sad and painful. The funeral was over and time passed quickly. 2 weeks had passed since my husband's death, and we were still going about our daily lives, still in a state of grief, when a person claiming to be my husband's secretary came to visit us. It has been a long time. Thank you for coming all the way here. Can I help you? I know this is sudden and rude, but the president gave me this. If something should happen to him, I was told to give you this. What he handed me was a letter. What is this? I want you to read it to the child in secret. What? I was told to tell the president that. I think it was probably from the president. I see, but why? Why did he prepare a letter? I have not heard the contents of the letter either. I have returned the items entrusted to me by the president, so I will leave you now. The secretary bowed her head and left. I opened the letter in wonder. If Zaida is reading this, then I must no longer exist in this world. First of all, I want to thank you. Thank you for raising Oscar. That is how my husband's letter was written out. Then, in the main body of the letter, it states that he would like me to head to the warehouse he has designated. I thought it was my husband's will and headed there, not understanding why since there was no reason written down. It was the warehouse of my husband's company. While I was standing in front of the warehouse wondering what was in here, I was approached by a young man. The young man had short black hair and the appearance of a young man these days. He was wearing a uniform with the company name embroidered on it. Are you the wife of the president? Yes, it was my husband's will that I should come here. We've been expecting you. Please come this way. He showed me in a friendly manner. He led me to the guest room. He asked me to sit on the sofa, and I sat at the end of the sofa. He made me a cup of tea and sat down in front of me. I read a letter that I should come here. Do you know why I was asked to come here? Dad, he didn't say why. What? Dad? I'm the boss's son. Well, I'm the son of a mistress. What? I could not hide my surprise at the suddenness of the situation. I was not sure what was going on, so I asked the young man back. What do you mean? Are you his son? And he had a mistress. Yes. My mother has been dating you since before you married my father, even before he married his ex-wife. She's like an unofficial common-law wife. What does that mean? I did not understand, but the young man explained with a grin. Her husband had been dating the young man's mother, Shayla, for a long time. However, his mother was very opposed to the marriage. She told him to marry a woman from the right family and forced her husband into an arranged marriage. Then, his ex-wife became pregnant and gave birth without incident. However, her husband secretly took Shayla as his mistress and had an affair with her. The ex-wife found out after the birth and divorced him. However, the child was a boy. That was Oscar. His mother forcibly separated him from his ex-wife, saying that she would make her grandson her heir, and won custody of him. However, just at that time, the mistress also found out she was pregnant. The child she is carrying is a boy, and it is Ethan, the young man in front of me now. The husband wanted the mistress to raise his son and asked her to marry him, but she refused, saying that she would never raise someone else's child. Not wanting to bear the burden of raising a child themselves, his mother and my husband decided, after much consideration, to marry again and have a second wife. The plan was to have his wife raise their son. And then his wife was me. But my father wanted me to take over the company. Of course he wanted me to take over the company. It's the child of the woman he loved. That's why I called you. What do you mean? You're not very perceptive, are you? It is true that I am the boss's child, but I am unrecognized. That's why I don't have my father's inheritance right. I was told to inherit it from you. The young man who said this without hesitation did not seem to be offended in the slightest. I was simply astonished at the fact that he had told me of his infidelity after my husband's death and even asked me to take care of him. Your mother, how is she? She got sick 5 years ago. She died before my father. And then you had my husband to take care of you all these years. I don't know. I mean, all the time. Dad, he didn't give you any money, did he? He was giving it all to us. He said it wouldn't be a problem because you could earn money. I bit my lip as the facts were revealed one after another. I could not forgive him for treating me like that. Anyway, I think my lawyer is coming to talk to you about the inheritance. You can call me too. That was all the young man said, and he kicked me out of the guest room. He pushed me outside and told me to leave. In frustration, I glared at the young man's back as he tried to get back to work. After returning home, I sit alone in the living room with my head in my hands. My husband's many shocks have left me feeling unresolved, and I don't know what to say to my son. Just as I sigh and wonder what to do, my son walks into the living room. I'm home. What's wrong? What's wrong, Mom? You're sighing. No, it's nothing. I'm fine, I'm just glad you're home. You're home early. I'm off work today, so, what's that? My son noticed my husband's letter spread out on the table and quickly picked it up. Regretting that I had not put it away immediately, I thought of an excuse. Why is there a letter from my dad? What is this warehouse? It's not, probably a prank. No, it can't be. This is my father's letter. What's going on? Don't hide anything from me. I tried to cover it up, but looking into my son's straight eyes, it was hard for me to keep quiet, so I told him. When I told him what had happened today, he began to tremble. Sorry, Mom. My father did something like that. It's not your fault. It was me who didn't notice. You don't have to take care of him. I have a plan. What are you gonna do? Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I was worried, but he stopped shaking and looked straight at me. I believed him and entrusted him to me. Then we were called in to see a lawyer for the division of property. Thank you very much for gathering here. We are gathered here today to discuss the division of Mr. Asher Taylor's property. The young man, who identified himself as my husband's son, looked at my son with a smirk on his face. The three of us gathered there, the young man, myself, and my son. We also contacted my mother-in-law, who was already in an institution, but she was not present that day because she had decided to waive her inheritance. The lawyer begins to speak plainly. First of all, let's talk about the details of the inheritance. Oh, okay. I'll just sign it. You're going to disinherit, aren't you? The young man looked at us and urged. I renounce my inheritance. I also renounce my inheritance. I will also adopt Ethan and transfer all of my property to him. I will inherit it. I'm going to sign it now, so hurry up. I have plans after this. I need to talk to you first. I will adopt you for the inheritance, but I want you to terminate the adoption as soon as the inheritance is completed. I don't want to take care of you. I understand. I'm not interested in having anything to do with you. You don't have any property. Please make the necessary arrangements. The young man asked his lawyer. The lawyer accepted the request and, perhaps having already heard about it from my husband, produced the documents he had prepared for the adoption and inheritance. We signed it and were done. The young man left as soon as he was done. And then we went home too. After a month of living a normal life, I started receiving numerous phone calls from a blocked number. I was suspicious of them, but spent my time ignoring them. While we were having dinner together, the chime rang. Who could it be at this hour? I'll go check on him. My son took the initiative and followed him toward the front door. When I opened the front door, there he was, the young man. Hey! What's going on? He shouted as soon as our eyes met. It's a nuisance to the neighbors. What do you want? It's my father's inheritance. It's nothing. If anything, it's negative. You said the company was in the black, but it wasn't. That's not what you said. What are you talking about? We weren't told anything about my father's company. You knew that and you left the inheritance, didn't you? He's a liar. I'm still in debt at my age. It's not our fault. Please leave. It is a nuisance. If you make any more noise, I will call the police. My son responded firmly to the young man who was yelling at him, and successfully turned him away. The young man left, yelling repeatedly. Perhaps he was trying to harass us. He must have realized it by now. It's his fault for not listening to the end of the conversation. My son covered his shoulders and went back to the living room. Seeing my son's back, I felt resilient. 6 months later, my husband's secretary came to visit me. "I am sorry to keep coming back to you," she said. "I just thought it might be necessary to tell you." I led the secretary, who bowed, into the guest room. I offered him a cup of tea and asked him about his story. At first, the young man took advantage of the fact that he had become the president and did whatever he wanted. When he found out that the accounting was in the red and that he needed to start the next business, he became furious. He had no management skills, and the company went under. He told me that he was currently unaccounted for, but that since he was also carrying my husband's personal debts, he must have broken himself somewhere. When I heard this, I realized that life doesn't go well when you are raised by bad parents. It seems that my son felt it too. "I'm glad you were there for me, Mom. I wonder if I would have ended up like that if you hadn't been there." "It's okay. You've always been strong. You will be fine." I smiled at him and he laughed as if he was relieved. We have been living peacefully ever since. I adopted my son. It may be a small amount, but I am still working and would like to leave a legacy for my son. However, my son is employed by a well-known foreign company. I will earn the money myself. He works very hard. With such a reliable son, I will continue to live modestly and peacefully. On a peaceful Thursday afternoon, Elizabeth Morrison stood in her kitchen and switched on the coffee maker. Florida sunlight streamed through the window, warming the new granite countertop. The laughter of neighborhood children echoed from the garden where orange trees grew. What should I make for Ryan's snack, she wondered. The clock showed 2:15. There were still 45 minutes until her son would return from school. Elizabeth opened the refrigerator and took out cheese and celery sticks. The nutritionist at St. Mary's Elementary had advised her to prepare healthy snacks, especially considering her son's heart condition. Elizabeth smiled slightly as she turned to the inventory management system for Sunshine Fashion. As store manager for 7 years, her competence was well regarded in the community. Her part-time work-from-home arrangement was granted based on that track record. Every Thursday, she would work at the store only in the morning and spend the afternoon working from home. This schedule was arranged to accommodate her son's regular checkups. Her husband Philip had left early for work this morning. With a big contract approaching at Liberty Insurance, he'd been working late recently. "Once this contract is sealed, we can take Ryan to Disney World," he had said with a smile last night. Yet, there was something unsettled about his demeanor. During a break from work, Elizabeth glanced at the family photo in the living room. It captured their smiling faces after last year's Easter service at First Presbyterian Church. 6-year-old Ryan wore a light blue bow tie, looking proud. Their weekly Sunday worship was precious family time. However, on the shelf next to it sat an older photograph with another person, her sister Caroline. 10 years ago, Elizabeth had cut ties with her sister after a decisive argument over their parents' care. Caroline had abandoned their parents' care, saying she wanted to live her own life, and later, their parents passed away in an accident. Elizabeth's emotional wounds ran deep, and she continued to refuse reconciliation with her sister. Recently, She heard from a church acquaintance that Caroline was divorced and raising a child alone. She wasn't sure if the information was accurate. Since her sister barely used social media, there was no way to know her current situation. Her mother-in-law Ruth visited every weekend without fail, bringing homemade pot roast for dinner. "We're family," Ruth would say, encouraging reconciliation, and Philip agreed. But Elizabeth's heart remained stubborn. The regret of not being able to care for her parents in their final moments continued to smolder as anger toward her sister. Life in the quiet residential area of Winter Park seemed perfect on the surface. Her mother-in-law lived nearby, within quick reach if needed. Every Thursday afternoon, Ruth went grocery shopping. Her route home overlapped with St. Mary's Elementary School path. While working at her computer, Elizabeth thought about her son's health. Although Ryan's heart condition was mild, he needed checkups twice a year. The next one was scheduled for next week at Advent Health Winter Park. She tried not to show anyone the anxiety she felt during each examination. Looking at the oak trees swaying in the wind in the garden, Elizabeth reflected, "This is the life I chose." She had sealed away the conflict with her sister and decided to focus on the happiness before her. Yet sometimes, her sister's smile would surface from the depths of her memories. The sound of yellow school buses passing by began to fill the air. It was almost time for her son to return home. Elizabeth stood up and started preparing the snack. She washed the celery sticks, cut them into small pieces, and added peanut butter, her son's favorite combination. At the intersection of Oak Street and Park Avenue, the yellow signal light began flashing to indicate school dismissal time. This intersection had become a topic of local concern due to frequent accidents. That's when the phone rang. Elizabeth put on her hands-free earpiece. It was Ruth. Her mother-in-law usually called around this time after her Thursday shopping to share information about daily necessities on sale. Elizabeth kept her eyes on the invoice on her screen and responded, "Yes, Mother." However, what came through the receiver was her mother-in-law's distraught screaming. "Elizabeth! Why aren't you at the hospital? Ryan! Ryan's been in an accident." Elizabeth's fingers froze at the sudden words. Her mind went blank. What? But he's still at school. An ambulance. An ambulance headed to Advent Health Winter Park. I saw it clearly. A boy in St. Mary's uniform, at the Oak Street intersection. Just then, the front door opened. "I'm home." Her son's voice. Elizabeth couldn't believe her ears. It was definitely Ryan's voice, yet on the phone, her mother-in-law was sobbing. "Mother, Ryan just came home. He's here." "What?" Ruth's voice trembled. "But I clearly saw it. Light blue polo shirt and navy pants. It was definitely St. Mary's uniform. At that intersection, a car." Elizabeth stood up and walked to the living room. Ryan had already put down his backpack and was proudly announcing, "Hey, I got a perfect score on my math test today." Her son was definitely there. Safe and sound. But her mother-in-law's confused voice continued. "I'm certain that child got off the bus, and suddenly, a black SUV." Various thoughts raced through Elizabeth's mind. Yes, her son was right in front of her. But she had never heard her mother-in-law so distraught before. And the fact that a boy in St. Mary's uniform had been in an accident. Contact Philip. Ruth's voice trailed off. Oh, come to think of it, I think I saw Philip's car at the scene. At that moment, anxiety spread through Elizabeth's chest. Her husband's car at the scene. Why? Liberty Insurance's office was in the opposite direction. She picked up her cell phone and dialed her husband's number. No answer. She tried again. Then, a short message arrived. Emergency. Heading to the hospital. Elizabeth took a deep breath and made a decision. Something was wrong. And she needed to find out what that something was. Ryan, you're coming to the hospital with Mommy. Huh? But my homework. It's okay, I'll explain in the car. Elizabeth took her son's hand. Someone might need our help. As they approached the intersection of Oak Street and Park Avenue, police car lights were still flashing. Officers were collecting evidence, and long skid marks remained on the ground. Elizabeth casually brought up trivial topics to keep her son's eyes away from the scene. Hey, tell me more about that test. Entering the hospital parking lot, she spotted a familiar car, Philip's black BMW. And next to it, an unfamiliar silver minivan. For some reason, Elizabeth's heart jumped when she saw that car. Walking toward the emergency entrance, Elizabeth held her son's hand tightly. She could sense that something major had happened. But she couldn't yet imagine what it was. The sound of automatic doors opening. The smell of disinfectant. And down the hall, the sight of her husband in distress, more distraught than she had ever seen him. He's still unconscious, echoed a doctor's voice in white coat. Elizabeth stepped forward. And then that moment arrived. As a nurse removed the patient's uniform, they discovered a distinctive heart-shaped mole on the neck. When the nurse questioned this feature, one Ryan didn't have, they checked the belongings and found the name Tommy Wilson. Contact Caroline. At that name, Elizabeth's world stopped. Caroline. The name of the sister she had cut ties with 10 years ago. And the sight of her husband slumping against the wall. All the pieces were beginning to connect in a horrifying way. The fluorescent lights of Advent Health Winter Park cast cold shadows in the hallway. Elizabeth stood there, still holding her son's hand. The name the nurse had spoken echoed in her ears like slow motion. Caroline Wilson. Her sister's name. A name she had avoided speaking for 10 years. And her husband, still leaning against the wall. All color had drained from Philip's face. Ma'am, we've managed to reach the patient's mother, Caroline, a woman at the nurse's station called out. She says she'll be here in about 15 minutes. 15 minutes. In just 15 minutes, a 10-year gap would be bridged. Elizabeth looked at her son. Ryan was anxiously observing the hospital scene. Mom, what's wrong with Dad? Is he sick? Before she could answer, her mother-in-law Ruth rushed in. She must have been upset since that phone call. But when she saw the scene in the hallway, her expression changed. Philip, her mother-in-law's voice carried an unprecedented sternness. You've been. Her husband couldn't lift his face. Seeing him like this, something inside Elizabeth began to crumble. 10 years. estrangement from her sister, and her husband's recent behavior. The scattered pieces were coming together in a terrifying pattern. Wait, Elizabeth suddenly raised her voice. St. Mary's Elementary, you strongly recommended it, didn't you? Don't tell me. Philip's silence told everything. Yes, you wanted to keep Tommy nearby. Elizabeth's voice began to shake. That's why the high tuition didn't bother you. That's why the recent overtime, it was all lies, wasn't it? Caroline managed to speak. Elizabeth, Shut up. For the first time, Elizabeth's emotions exploded. 10 years ago, you abandoned our parents. And now, my family, my life. Just then, the operating room door opened. Mom. A faint voice leaked out. Tommy had regained consciousness. Caroline rushed to her son's side. Watching her sister's back, something inside Elizabeth continued to crumble. Her sister's back. Once, it had always protected her. Now, it had become such a distant existence. Ma'am, a nurse approached. About the patient's heart condition. It's the same as Ryan's, isn't it? Elizabeth interrupted. The doctor mentioned genetic factors. Philip raised his head. Elizabeth, let me explain. Explain. Elizabeth stared at her husband. What is there left to explain? Our children, both your children. Born with the same heart condition. In the face of this fact, any excuse. Suddenly, Ryan, who had returned from the cafeteria, called out. Hey, that boy in the bed is wearing the same polo shirt as me. A silence fell as if time had stopped. All the adults present froze at this innocent 6-year-old's comment. Ruth placed her hand on her grandson's shoulder. Ryan, want to get some juice with Grandma? But Ryan was already peering into the hospital room. Huh. He kind of looks like me. Elizabeth made a decision. With trembling hands, she took out her cell phone and dialed a number. Hello, is this Johnson Law Office? I'd like to consult about a divorce. Philip slumped against the wall. Caroline held her son in the hospital room, crying silently. And Ruth watched both her grandsons, contemplating the new shape of their family. Elizabeth, Ruth said quietly. Let's talk about what comes next, slowly. For the children's sake. Outside the window, night was falling. Different shadows began to fall in the hospital hallway. They were shadows suggesting a new family form. Tommy and Ryan. The two boys still didn't know the truth. They had met simply as friends wearing the same uniform. Their innocent encounter ironically highlighted the adults' lies and betrayals. Elizabeth slowly approached the hospital room and clearly saw her nephew's, no, Ryan's half-brother's face for the first time. Indeed, he resembled Ryan. Of course he did, the same blood flowed through their veins. Tommy, Elizabeth spoke gently. I'm your mother's sister. From now on, we're family. Her words trailed off. But in those brief words, a small hope for the future appeared. Perhaps it was the beginning of a new bond, one that transcended hatred and betrayal. Night shift nurses passed through the hallway, and the announcement for the end of visiting hours began to play. This day was coming to an end. However, this wasn't an ending, but the beginning of a new story. 6 months later, as autumn began to color the street trees of Winter Park, Elizabeth stood in her new home's kitchen, packing identical sandwiches into 2 lunch boxes. "Mom, put peanut butter in mine too." Ryan's voice rang out. "Me too." Tommy chimed in beside him. It was the weekend of joint custody. The 2 children had now completely bonded as brothers. Elizabeth smiled as she looked at the 2 lunch boxes. The same light blue polo shirts, the same backpacks. And 2 boys who both went for heart checkups twice a year. "We don't want to be late for the First Presbyterian Church picnic," Elizabeth said, and the 2 boys rushed to get ready, competing with each other. The divorce proceeded surprisingly smoothly. Philip acknowledged all his wrongdoings and accepted almost all of Elizabeth's demands. Liberty Insurance, wanting to avoid scandal, approved Philip's transfer. He was now starting a new life in Atlanta. The relationship with Caroline was still awkward. However, for the children's sake, the sisters were gradually building dialogue. Even their past conflict over their parents' care now appeared in a different light. Caroline, Elizabeth had told her sister on the phone recently, "Let's have the same doctor treat our children. Comparing their symptoms might help find better treatment options." That proposal became a significant step in breaking their 10-year silence. "You know," Tommy confided to Elizabeth one day in the hospital waiting room, "Mom cries every night. Saying, 'I'm sorry.'" Elizabeth silently hugged the boy. That night, she called her sister for the first time in a long while. They talked about their parents. And about the meaning of each of their choices. Ruth still visited every weekend with pot roast, but now to Elizabeth's new apartment, a 10-minute walk from the house. The mother-in-law had become even more central to the family than before. "Mother," Elizabeth had told Ruth recently, "thank you for calling me right away when you witnessed the accident. Without that, we might never have known the truth." Ruth quietly responded, "The truth always comes to light eventually. What matters is how we live afterward." At St. Mary's Elementary, Tommy and Ryan became known as the look-alike friends. Neither knew yet about their blood connection. The adults had decided to wait until they were older to tell them that story. Miss Elizabeth, the teacher, approached her during Christmas pageant preparations. "Would you mind if both your boys played angels?" At those words, Elizabeth's eyes welled up with tears. Indeed, they were like angels. A pure bond born from adults' lies and betrayals. A new traffic light had been installed at the intersection of Oak Street and Park Avenue. The traces of the accident were gone, replaced by new guideposts. Elizabeth passed through this intersection every morning on her way to work. And remembered the moment her life changed dramatically. At Sunshine Fashion, Elizabeth now spent more time in the store. "I want to build my new life with my own strength." That determination was reflected in her daily work. Caroline had moved in 3 houses down from Elizabeth. The sisters still didn't converse frequently. However, watching their children go back and forth between houses, they were gradually closing the distance between them. "Hey," Tommy said to Ryan one day, "we're like real brothers, aren't we?" Hearing those words, Elizabeth and Caroline exchanged glances. Someday, they would have to tell these children the truth. And by then, they hoped to walk together as a family bound by even stronger ties. Outside the window, the bells of First Presbyterian Church began to ring. Another new day was about to begin. Elizabeth picked up the 2 lunch boxes and called out, "Come on, let's go. Let's create our new family story."